We're so glad that you decided to tune into the Church Rehab podcast. This episode has been brought to you by Canady Enterprises. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the podcast so you can be notified each time a new episode drops. Enjoy the podcast with our host, Pastor Mechelle Canady of Embrace You Ministries. Hello and welcome to another episode of Church Rehab. I am Pastor and Master Life Coach Mechelle Canady, and I am super excited that we are here for another episode. So, if you have not caught the past episodes where I've had a couple of preacher kids on the show who shared their church experience, do so. Also, subscribe to the channel by subscribing to the channel. Whenever we upload a new podcast, you'll be notified.
Here is where we left off in the last episode.
Mm. Mm.
They said things like, I don't care how much y'all argue. Y'all can be fighting and cussing on the way to church. When y'all get on church ground, you smile. When he preach, you be his biggest amen. I'm like, that was some real craggy bull to tell somebody to do because that created this false persona.
Mm.
So once I was out of the marriage, I had did the healing work. I had discovered who I was. I was like, I'm never going back to not being me. So when the Lord was calling me in the ministry, I was like, yeah, no, I don't know about that. I
Mm.
was like, I know who Coach is. I know who Miss Get You Together is. I know who Shell is because she crazy. Like Shell from Grand Park. Don't play with it. But I'm like, I don't even know what Pastor Michelle would look like. And I remember sitting to my computer, and I remember hearing the voice of the Lord that said, do you in this?
Mhm.
And that was the moment that freed me to be like, this what you gonna get. I'm like you. I I think I got two church dresses. So you gonna get a graphic T-shirt, some jeans. I'm gonna be flashy. I'm gonna be jazzy because that's who I am, and the people I'm called to lead are okay with who I am. And one of the things I always tell people is I won't lead people who I can't live in front of.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I
Mm.
won't. I'm sorry if I can't because I'm not going back to bondage. I'm not going back to having to show up as my what I call my representative. That person that we've created because of our own thought of what people expect of us, as well as our own expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And I look at it like this, and this is what kind of set me free in my adult age. Is and and I use this all the time when I get into it with my parents, and they say, "Oh, you shouldn't have did this, you shouldn't have did that," because we still go back and forth on some things. And I say, "Hey, Jesus wrote in the sand." And I said, and I always say, "Do you know what he wrote in the sand when those people brought that adulterer to him?" And we always get into, I said, "Well, what do you think he wrote?" And I always question them, and we have fun with it because I said, "Do you really think Jesus was talking about thou art this and talking like that? Or do you think he was like, hey, Peter, what's up, man? Hey, did you do like how do you really think if Jesus is black as the Bible says he is? Do you really think he was going through the motions talking about thou art this and wither in this?" No, he would. I said, Jesus probably drops all types of words, and we ain't know that the Bible ain't saying. But I got to tell them, I said, I'm not going to sit here and live for other people and for them to tell me to do certain things. And I said, and I don't know what Jesus wrote in the sand that makes them run away.
Mm, mm,
I'm not gonna do that. I said, yeah, they can cast all types of stones at me, but I want to see what Jesus is gonna write in the sand about them. Until I see that, they can't say nothing about me.
yeah,
They can't say nothing about. I'm gonna live not how I want to live. Some things I have to protect my and save myself from, and need
Yeah.
people around me to say. But I'm gonna live like I said, to be me,
yeah,
and unapologetically. And like I said, I think that that's something that even my parents sometimes have had to fight me with, because I've always said I'm the rebel of the family. I will always be that. My sister can literally learn from every mistake I've made and be good, and she has been good because I made a lot. But I told her, I said, I'm the rebel for a reason. I'm the rebel for a reason. I've always been that way. I'm the one that was bumping Bootsy in the car the first day I got it. Like, and you can't do that. We live in a nice neighborhood, so they gonna learn Bootsy too. I'm coming through here booming. I'm doing it all. But
yeah,
I've always been that way because I say, hey, I'm just being me. And now in my adult age, people loving it because it's you being you. So like I said, it's for me. It's like I said, if you can't write your stuff in the sand, or I can't see what Jesus writing in the sand about you that make you run away, you can't say nothing
yeah.
about me because and at this point, you know, what can we do about it? You have something that's probably just as bad as mine that you don't want nobody else to see. So we
That,
good.
that's what happened to me growing. It was. I went and told my dad one day. I said, "Man, you know what? I feel like the church we grew up in was a cult." He was like, "What?" Yeah. Oh, I said, I say I love them dearly. I say, but Reb would get up, man, and then cuss y'all out, and then turn around and say, "Hey, I need everybody all to give $500, and y'all jokers gave $500." I ain't get that. I'm like, growing up, that you was going to hell for everything. You know,
Mhm.
Yes.
going to hell if you ain't have on the tie. Going to hell if you women didn't wear stockings. You're going to hell if this. And I'm like, I told him, I said, you messed up by letting me go off to school. And I can't remember the professor, Leofric. I think his name was Michael Johnson, Pastor Michael Johnson. And dude said in class, our first day of intro to religion, I only know I'm in this class. And he said, where all the Kojic at? And the Kojic people in the classroom, like, code, they like, what y'all got going on? Like A&B making noise. So you got the Baptists. We in the classroom like, boy, we the Baptists.
Uh-huh.
We do. You line hymns like us. You preach like us. You want to be like us. And that man stood in front of the class and called all us ignorant.
Mm-hmm.
Ignorant.
Yeah.
That right there changed my whole perspective on ministry, from women preaching to speaking in tongues to like you saying wearing jeans in the pulpit. I remember you couldn't touch the communion table, you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
Walk across the
Yes.
pulpit, you're gonna die. All this death that was happening. And then when I started preaching, even my dad one time he was like, man, you son, we need to talk. And I'm like, yes, sir. You're like, man, you in church talking about weed and crack and coke and this and that. I'm like, but look at our congregation. They understand weed, they understand crack, they understand drug dealing, we don't have these, we ain't even got no deacons in the church. They don't even, the deacons we do got, we just picked them up off the corner. So they don't even know what amazing grace is. They don't understand. So it was kind of a strange going to Zion Hope, where I didn't even know the culture of Zion Hope. Truthfully, I had never even fellowship with them. But I'm taking me. And now, man, it's funny to see these, older people coming up to me at the church and say, man, Pastor, I just want to run some Sundays. I say, well, just go on and run. My arthritis won't let me run. But like, hey, man, because I started watching, like you said, started watching people outside. I started seeing, other pastors and hearing other people preach, and just still being who I am. I didn't grow up and say, "Oh, that's my favorite preacher," or that's, I remember when your dad came back to the city and preached at my Lebanon. I'm like, "Oh my God, man, this dude here can preach." Thing.
Yes.
I grew up under I say the old John Allen Newman from the old Mount Calvary,
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
when St. Thomas used to be on the other end of Moncrief,
Mhm.
and Landon Williams and Bethel. I got baptized at Bethel Sweetwater, but I seen those preachers. But I'm like, who am I in the pulpit? Who am I in ministry? I'm just be who I am, and I really believe that if the church leaders really just be authentically them, I believe, man, we'll change. Our young people are thirsty for the word. Our young people are thirsty for ministry, but they want to see authentic people.
Yeah.
They don't they don't care. They know you make mistakes already. They
Yeah.
know you messed up. So that's why my ministry is at the place that it is, because I'm just authentic with them kids, man. And I done had kids, being at Reebok High School and other high schools, man, have guns on them, have drugs, and hey, man, Mr. Foreman, I know I'm wrong, and people say, why did they come to you and speak to you? I'm like, because at the end of the day, I got to meet them where they are. I don't beat them up because of what they're doing. I'm trying to encourage them to say, hey, man, there's a better life. But how do you preach to a person who all they know is selling drugs?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Talking about God gonna make a way, and they looking like, yeah, bro, yeah, God gonna make a way because He gonna let me get on that corner today and make a way. So that's where my for me ministry has changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
I know it always makes me think about the scripture that says we have a high priest who could be touched by our infirmities. Uh, but we don't have pastors who could be touched by our infirmities
Mhm.
because there's such that divide and that wall that they ain't gonna say, yeah, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
Today ain't good. I had a rough night. I'm
Mhm.
battling with depression. I'm struggling in my flesh. There wasn't a culture where they are able to say that, but that's what's going on in the church.
Mhm.
And it ain't nothing like feeling you the only person in the world going through it. And then the person that you look up to say, it's okay, you gonna make it because I made it.
Mhm.
So we gotta be able to be touched. We gotta be able to be relatable. We gotta be able to really live in front of people. And that's one of the things that I really try hard to do. Also, let's talk about being different. Because like for me, I always struggle with being different.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I was like 35 years old. We were living in Valdosta, and Pastor Floyd Rose said he was preaching um, about some of John Maxwell's laws, and I had never heard anybody preach anything uh, concerning John Maxwell that ain't in the Bible. And so he said, the law of the difference is the more different you are, the more difference you make. I'm like, oh my God,
Mhm.
did anybody else feel that like I felt that? It was like the chains
Yeah.
um like literally fell off me and assured me that it's okay to be different. So when people be like, oh, you pastor, where y'all church is? And I said, we fully virtual.
Mhm.
I'm like, it's all right.
Mhm.
It's okay.
Yeah.
We're moving in that line. And like I have people who live everywhere. I have one of my most faithful members, she lives in New Jersey.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how doing ministry different um feels.
You said, how does doing ministry different feel?
Hmm. Because I was going to say, LJ Leofric, you mentioned about like you feel that your call is different,
Mhm.
because you minister to people in a different way, not in a pulpit,
Yeah.
but what you do in the marketplace is ministry.
Yeah. Well, I think that it's a I look at the and I always say my father's story is the story of Joseph. But I look at Joseph's life, and how Joseph was just doing everything his daddy said, and he was looked down as favorable by God, and he was the one that God chosen to be, had basically was the chosen one out of all of his brothers, and I look at that and I say, hey, I was always just a person as I got older and I understood ministry a little bit more. Hey, I just did everything my daddy needed me to do, and I just, now it's just kind of like you just do things that are pretty much uh important to the ministry. And
Hmm.
like I said, my ministry, I felt, and it's funny you said the thing about the different thing is because me and my father, I truly believe I try to impress him when it comes to speaking. And I know the first time I ever spoke in front of a crowd, he helped me get my message or my speaking points together. And I had an acronym that he didn't understand at first, and then when he finally read it slow, he said, "Oh, I get what you're saying. All right, I'm there. Okay, okay." And then it's like, okay, now you're under. I understand your wheelhouse. Now come on into mine. So it's good to have that difference in ministry, because now me and him connect differently. Now we talk about things differently. So before, the churches operated off tithes and offerings. I say, hey man, now one thing that these African American churches do, that these other our counterpart churches do, is they get sponsorships and grants from
Mhm.
cities. And I said, so that's something now we need to tap into. So everything, we ain't saying, oh, we need to raise a special offering, or we need to raise, no, let's tap into the city, let's tap into the government, let's use this 501c3. Let's, so now we having those type of talks and things that nature, that are different, because the wheelhouses that we work in are much different. So really, I feel like my call is to go into the marketplace and bring it back to the church and expand it, to be honest with you, because that's exactly what I can say I've been doing for the last 6 years, is literally making my footprint into what was nonprofit world, now it's government, and now I'm bringing that back literally to the church. And how can we expand God's ministry, and utilize these resources that's given to us. So I think that that's something that he's embraced, that I've embraced in knowing my role
Mhm.
as the PK now. And that's why I say I don't try to be like him as much as I am. As much as I am like him in ministry, we're nothing the same. So that's something that I think we both embrace, and I love it. Just the other day, I think just I know just to this morning, he sent me something where he was invited to something within the city, and I was like, "Oh, look at you going!" And so for me, it's normal to get that type of stuff, but for him, I'm like, "Oh, so yeah, you got invited today? Okay, you going? You gonna be with the big dogs? Okay." So it's fun for us to do that. We're big Jaguars fans. I remember we had a meeting with the Jaguars. I want to say about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and they took us in, gave us a tour and all this stuff. And I said, "Hey man, come on, you coming with me?" So we sitting there, we're talking to directors and things of that nature. So that's the thing I'm happy to do, and on my end, because he did it with me when it was, I was his when I was younger. I
Mhm.
was in every meeting, I was in a whole bunch of stuff, I was right there next to him. So it's a pleasure to reverse it now, and now he's with me on a lot of things that I do, and we're allowed to able to sit through a lot of things. So it does my heart good to know that we're in different parts of ministry or sectors of ministry, but we're able to collaborate and do things together. So although we don't have that pastor son team in the pulpit, I think we have it in the community, and I really embrace that.
Yeah, that's almost more beneficial than being in the pulpit together.
Yep.
Yeah.
For me, it's taking advantage of the fact that I have teenage children. So I'm able, since my son was playing in the park, uh, the guys at the park would be like, "Hey man, that's Pastor." Be like, "Oh okay," So man, those guys, it's crazy because they would be like, "Hey man, yeah, I ain't going to church, but how can I give?
Mhm.
Hey man, you'll pray for me." One of the biggest um, how would I put it, videographers in the city who does a lot. I'm not gonna say his name. One day, man, I was at the park. And he walked up to me, man, tears in his eyes, like, "Hey, man, you'll pray for me right there at the park." So I believe what makes me different and what Zion Hope now has accepted when it comes to me is that I have the ability to go into literally 4 or 5 high schools and touch. I mean, and just hang out with the kids. I
Yeah.
don't go in there as pastor, even though people, will call me that, majority of the time, "Oh man, that's Tripp's dad," or, "That's Madison's dad." And so because of that, it allows me, truthfully, to young people who don't go to church are now coming to church
Mhm.
because they like, "Oh man, that's Mr. Foreman." Like, and the parents who don't go to church, because I still coach middle school football, still involved in a lot of sports at Reball Middle. But like I say, I can go to Reball High School, I can go over the range, I can go to Riverside. And Leofric, when you can walk into these schools and these young men embrace you, you have something that truthfully
A lot of people had that.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of pastors, truthfully, wish they had, because it's a lot of churches today that don't even have youth departments.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I currently, have a, a I think about 18 of my youth, my high school kids, just went on college tours, and I still have little ones growing up. I actually have baptized kids who were students at Reebok who now having children and join Zion Hope, and that's something that I know that I stand on. Even with being there, I pull people to the side, and people come up to the school. Hey, we need. When they was doing a lot of that killing, oh my goodness, I show up to work. The mental health counselor, Mr. Foreman, yes, ma'am. I need you to come in here and pray. Like, no, I'm Mr. Foreman. I'm just here to. They're like, no, you pastor right now. So that's where for me, and a lot of people have asked me like, hey man, you full time at Zion Hope, and I'm like, yeah. You still go to the school? I'm like, that's my ministry.
Yeah.
That's what ministry started for me. That's where my pulpit was at. When I can get these boys in ISSP and they high, I'm high now because they high.
You got a contact.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they sitting there listening to me, and they like, yeah, man, you right. And there has been times where we've been able to get them to cease the killing or be able to have conversations like, man, you ain't got to go that route.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I had to bury the 14-year-old young man, Prince Holland, and a lot of those kids that were there that day, man, have gotten baptized and are now part of Zion Hope. So that's who I am. That's my difference. Instead of just being a Sunday morning pulpit guy or a Bible study guy, I believe my dad believed in outreach growing up. I'll never forget the first time we went in the back of Ken night. I'm like, bro, I'm not.
Ooh.
But it was this lady. It was this lady, and she's a great lady. She said, "Oh, Pastor, you ain't got to be scared. Come on, go on back there with me." And she banging on these people's doors because why? She came out of that area. She came out of that community, and I believe that that's another thing that we have to. If we want to see our community change, we have to get out into the community. We have to touch these people. We got to meet them where they are and understand at the end of the day, man, the message is not just a Sunday morning message, and it has to be like you doing, Leofric. Whether it's your nonprofit, it's an opportunity to give a message, and it don't always have to be Psalms 23. It don't always have to be
Yes.
Psalms. It don't always have to be Revelations. It could just be like, look here, man. Today you're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the message. And really, what's taking place in my ministry is that I have a young lady who just graduated from Central Florida, been a part of Zion Hope all her life. I just one day walked up to her and said, hey, man, what you went to school for? She's like, digital art and media. I'm like, huh? She was like, yeah. And so now I tell people, they be like, man, I see you on social media. I say, that's all her. She forces me every day to do it. So that's the difference of letting young people keep me young. I'm still young, but they keep me young.
Yeah, and they say if you don't have no young people in your church, you got to die in church.
You got to die in church.
Got to continue to invest in, and I think that's what younger people are attracted to now as far as churches is the difference. Is what is different about your church that captures me or grabs me, whether it's the message, whether it's praise and worship, whether it's your ministry work. I mean, you are definitely more powerful in the community and doing things in the community in your schools and things that nature. And matter of fact, I just had a call today saying, hey, I need somebody to come out to my senior citizens facility at midday. So I'm like, okay, cool. I throw it to our outreach ministry tomorrow. But it's always something that I feel like something like that we can go and be visible. That's something that's different, and we can really take advantage of that and do, and not be afraid of those places, your kin nights and things of that nature. I tell people all the time, man, that's where we need to go the most. That's who need us the most.
Yeah.
We need to hear it the most. I said, my father is preaching this series called Personal Moments with Jesus, and he just talked about how Zacchaeus, who was the biggest thief in the Bible, so to speak, as a tax collector, and Jesus said, I'm coming to your house. And it's amazing how when Jesus enters your house, how it's Zacchaeus' whole lifestyle changed right on the spot.
Yep.
I'm giving everybody their money back. I'm giving, and it's crazy how what happens when all you have to do is just go into the community and show them what Jesus looks like, and through the way you live and how you do things, how you handle them, and see how communities and lives change. So I think that's just what we got to do more, and that's what makes a difference. And I think that's how, like you said, Zion Hope has been able to thrive, or in Open Arms and the various other churches have been able to thrive, is because
Right.
you have a difference in leadership. Number one, and that also trickles down to being a difference in people, and which also makes a difference in your ministry. And I think that's excellent and thriving in the future for churches. So I think that I just think that you got to be different, and I think, like you said, your quote earlier, Michelle, was spot on. You got to be, in order to make a big difference, you got to be different yourself. So I totally agree with that.
I always tell people I'm not an outreach person. Like don't ask me to go knock on doors. Don't ask me to go into the community. But the organization of it, I'm gonna
Mhm.
organize it. I'm gonna get you some money. I'm gonna
Mhm.
make sure your staff on point. I'm gonna make sure y'all got matching T-shirts. I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna lay everything out for you, and then you go out there and do it. And so it is important that we do know what our role is. Like my ministry, and I say it often, like our ministry isn't because we're only 2 years old. We're not large enough to per se do outreach, and because we have our members are everywhere, but we fund outreach for other ministries. I saw where this guy, he was trying to get a generator for his revival tent. Bam, here you go. You know, we got a young lady who run track. Boom, there you go. One of my coaches, her she has a nonprofit organization where she feeds people. Here, boom. What you need? I'm gonna put this on because she give out like toiletries and stuff. I'm like, I'm gonna put this on recurring order.
Mhm.
So every 6 weeks, they're gonna send you more of this, you know. So we need all those people
Mhm.
in order to do it. And I believe when we learn our flow, that's where we thrive at.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
where we thrive.
yeah, yeah. I totally agree. Totally agree.
So, Leofric, if you had to share something with a preacher's kid who is struggling with their identity and struggling with being okay with being different, what would be that? What would you say to them?
Mm. And the reason I'm taking my time is because it's and I have a few PK chats that I have with a few PKs around the city, and with that it's kind of generic because everybody has their specific struggles. And
Mm,
I think if, when you become comfortable enough with a PK, you kind of figure out what that struggle is, that they struggle with. But as far as identity and things goes, I think that number one, they have to find. Also, I look at it as age too, because you never know. At certain ages that certain PKs go through this thing too, as far as identity
yeah,
goes. And like I said, the only reason I can speak of it so specific because I've literally been in it my whole life. But for somebody who's knowledgeable, who's trying to find a way, I would, number one, I would always try to say, ask God who what does He have for you,
yeah,
and what do you see, what does He have for your life, and how can you help honor Him first, before honoring other people. And I think that that's where you find your true identity at, is who you are in Him. Because while you may seem like you're forced to be in church, or you're forced to please these other people, at the end of the day, your main goal is, your life is not your own, it's for God, and you were placed in this specific and unique position for a reason. So if you're struggling with your identity, is to number one, find out who you are in Him, and he will in some kind of way. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week, it may be even a few years down the road, but he'll reveal you to that. But you can at least find peace in knowing that he's going to give that to you. And following that is to number one, like I said, try to get an understanding with parents,
yeah,
to help you be able to live as you would like to live, regular. You want to have them understand that you are not Leofric Senior, or you are not senior. You're you. You are the kid in this, and you're going to do kid things, or you're going to do young adult things, and until it's your time to step into ministry, or you're called into that. Because truth be told, a lot of pastors' kids are not called to ministry,
yeah,
and that's the thing that certain people have to accept also. And the last thing I would say is just to continue to be them. And like I said, once you give that prayer to God to find out what His will is for your life, and how you work to get to that, you leave that on the table, leave that burden at the altar with Him, and you go on about your business to be who you are, and He'll reveal Himself to you in the future. because I was once that person who didn't know. It wasn't until I went off to Bethune Cookman and I was by myself. Nobody knew who I was outside of a few preachers around the city, but nobody knew who I was. And I asked God. I literally walked Bethune Cookman's campus. I said, God, number one, I pray for success, but I want you to reveal who I am who I'm supposed to be in this world as I walked across that campus. And literally, I would say my one of my mentees, I call her my daughter. She's now Miss Bethune Cookman for this upcoming school year. And I told her, I said, I walked these campuses and I prayed over every building, every walkway, and I just asked God to bless and cover me. And He literally from that point on, I've never seen drought in my life. And I said you should do the same exact thing. And before then, she didn't know about beauty in herself, and I didn't. And look, she won Miss Freshman BCU,
Wow.
sophomore Miss Junior. Now she's Miss BCU, and I said, look, all you had to do is pray to have God reveal what He is to you. And she's not even a PK, but like I said, that's our ministry in certain areas. So now, she's going to give that to somebody else. But same thing with PKs. You have to really pray and ask God to reveal Himself to you and what He wants to do with your life. And I repeat Jeremiah 29:11 day by day. If I ain't got no other scripture to give to myself, I'm gonna give Him that, because His plan is for always for me to prosper and always have well being for my life. So that's what I would give to a PK, is to number one, ask God for what He can do in your life. Try to find that understanding between your parents and your congregation. And number three is to just be you. Continue to be you, because you can't be nobody else.
All right. So, Glenn, I have a different question for you.
Okay.
So, for a pastor who is struggling to be present in ministry and in home, what would you encourage him to do?
Oh, that's a good one.
Well, and I'm using truthfully sessions, opportunities like this to free myself at the same time, because with my father passing in November and still having to, I didn't believe in, oh man, I'm gonna preach my way through this, you know. So the day, some may not know, but the day my dad passed, we had the viewing for my aunt. So that Friday we had a viewing for my aunt. At the same time, I had to come back home to figure out, like, oh, my father's done passed. So then that Saturday is the funeral for my aunt. I didn't preach that Sunday. And then the following week, we have his funeral. And my dad always said, when I leave, you're gonna preach. And I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna do that. But God gave me the strength to preach. I didn't preach the following Sunday. But what I'm working through right now is more talking about it, dealing with it, facing, um, not standing on that. Well, I'm just gonna preach my way through it. I'm okay. No, I'm not okay. One particular Sunday, I sat on the front row, and a lot of times I may go to St. Paul before I go to Zion Hope, because they start at 9. And man, I got back to the church and I just sat there and cried on the front row. Literally cried. My wife ended up coming over and the deacons came over, and I just now try and talk more about it. As a pastor that's going through, the worst thing you can do is act like you're not going through.
Mhm.
That's the worst thing. You have to be honest with yourself and about the pain, about the frustration. If you remember, there was a period of time where pastors were committing suicide left and right,
Yep.
Yep.
because we were taught you still got to be, well, they were taught, you still got to be this, you got to still stand, you're sick, still stand, you still. And unfortunately, our counterparts, our Caucasian counterparts, they don't do that. When they ain't
Mhm.
feeling well, they like, hey man, I'm gone. They ready to walk away from ministry, they leave. Whereas on us, we stayed through we going through it. We stressed out, we depressed, we broke, we messed up, we're unhealthy. That's why I stay, working out. And it's simply because we don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm at a place now where me and my wife actually just had this conversation, because she said, you don't talk to me enough. And now I'm getting to a place where it's like, hey, man, I'm just not, it's just a bad day today.
Mm.
I can't stop crying today. I'm frustrated today. I'm this or that. And because I'm now doing a better job with talking about it, I'm freeing myself to where I'm really being authentic, and really my smile is real, compared to, I never wanted ministry to be work. I never wanted to get up on Sunday like, man, it's just my job. I'm gonna preach, I'm gonna shout to people, and I'm gonna leave. No, I want to be connected. So for me, I'm at that place where I'm actually getting ready to go through grief counseling, to help me. and even take my kids, because my kids, that was their life as well.
Mhm.
So really just diving into that. But I say to any pastor, and trust me, I still hold. I know they call me the senior pastor, but I hold people like Bishop Thomas and Bishop Guns and Pastor Gary. They're the senior pastors. I'm just I'm just the senior pastor. But I call those guys, man, for direction and help. And I think that's one thing that I want my generation of pastors to do, is that we never can be so familiar because another person is a pastor that we think we're on the same playing field as them.
Mhm.
They're still our leaders. They're still our guiding lights. And so that's why I am in my life, where I'm truthfully just being authentically honest with my feelings and going to the church and telling them, like, hey, man, today is not a good day. Pray for your pastor. I need y'all prayers, because guess what? I feel, and I feel it every Sunday, because Sunday became me and my father's, that's what our day.
Yeah.
That's where we worked together the most, and then came home and talked football and all those kind of things. So because that part of me is not there anymore, I just lean on a lot of people to pray for me, receive that encouragement. I'm having bad days, just be honest. That's it.
This has been amazing. I feel like it's so much more that we could talk about. I might have to bring y'all back so that we can have some more dialogue and some more conversation. So I do want to personally thank both of you for giving us your time, your stories, your testimonies. It is my prayer every time that someone would find the podcast or the YouTube channel and would receive understanding that they may have felt like they couldn't get anywhere else, just simply because you shared your story. So yeah. So I want to thank you all again for watching another episode of Church Rehab. I am Mechelle Canady, and this has been powered by Kennedy Enterprises. And make sure you subscribe to both the YouTube channel, which is Church Rehab, and the podcast, because it's available on most major directories. Thank you for listening and watching. Have a great day.
That concludes another episode of Church Rehab Podcast. We upload new episode every first and third Friday of the month. Come back so you can hear the conclusion of the interview with Glenn Foreman Jr. and Leofric Thomas Jr. I am your host, Pastor Mechelle Canady. Make sure you like and follow the podcast to receive notification whenever a new episode is released. Thank you, and remember, it's your time to thrive.